The amazing thing here is that the world really is changing, and the way that business is being done is different than it had been, and the way that we think about our art and creativity is changing at that same time. So it's a really nice moment where we can come together and really imagine collaboration and new ways of being in the world and making a living than we ever have seen before. So let's talk about collaboration really briefly. One of the things that is really cool about collaboration is what happens when we collaborate. And there's a really interesting study that was written in and described in a book called Imagine, that is no longer available on the shelves because there was some plagiarizing that went in this book. But one of the things that the author talked about was the power of cue. And what he did is he worked with some PhD students and also professors who wanted to study musical theater. What makes musical theater succeed? Why is there a Broadway hit and why is there a flop? And what they found is that who was on the creative team was critical to that. Not because it was the best people, but actually it was how well they knew each other. It was how much of the team had worked together before versus not having worked together before. And it wasn't what we normally think. It wasn't like, oh, if we all work together all the time, we're an awesome team and we will always have a Broadway hit. It was not that. It was that they needed new blood in order for innovation and amazing creativity to happen. And that in fact, in the teams where either everybody knew each other or no one knew each other, that you had the flops. But there was this sweet spot, the sweet spot of people being similar and knowing each other and feeling comfortable with each other and not knowing each other and not understanding each other. And that's the power that we really are hoping to help you unleash this weekend, is this power of getting people who often are not in the same room together, working together, thinking together, and allowing each other to create something even better than they could have imagined alone. Everyone has a story here that's about how they come to the place in the world and why they're an artist. And I was fortunate to grow up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the middle of the country, and was trained as a classical pianist as a youth and played in the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland when I was 15 years old. And I wanted to be a writer, and I had a really wonderful family who were all very, very musical, but none of them were musical professionals at all. In fact, none of them were art professionals. They were business people and laborers and librarians. When I went to college, I went for creative writing, and I thought, I am going to be the great American novelist, just like everyone else in creative writing programs believes. And yet, my family also had a really other interesting set of values besides art. Their values were about community. And both of my parents were active in politics. They were volunteers for lots of community organizations, and they just were involved in the community. And I got into college and I thought, gosh, I really feel like I'm supposed to be changing the world. You know, I've been given all these gifts. I'm middle class. I have lots of opportunities. My parents are supportive. And what am I supposed to be doing? And I felt that art was not the answer. I felt like art would not change the world at all, and that I needed to go be a politician. And I needed to be engaged in politics and the business world and figure all that stuff out and change laws and make the world a better place through the systems that we have set up. And so I went off and I stayed an English major, but no longer creative writing, and found myself in the world of politics. And I actually ran one of the largest political action committees in Missouri for 4 years, and then ended up working for the city of St. Louis in charge of downtown development. On the economic development side, I had $40 million housing projects and helped design the first planning process for downtown that St. Louis had seen since the 60s with a literature degree. So it's amazing how a liberal arts education is very important. But what happened for me is as I watched my career unfold, I didn't feel like I was changing anything. I was changing laws, and it was exciting and amazing work and certainly fulfilling, but I wasn't talking to people in a meaningful way. I wasn't engaging with people's hearts and with their art. And all of my friends were artists, but all of my colleagues were professionals, bureaucrats, politicians. And I felt a really strange conundrum in my soul. And so just after 9/11 started to happen, actually unfolded on one day as I think about it. But some things happened in St. Louis that were pretty distressing. Here I was in charge of downtown development. We'd passed a plan. It was a $2 billion investment plan in downtown St. Louis. And there was a lot of housing in this project. And in that year, a new mayor was elected in St. Louis. And this plan that had engaged 1,000 people from 13 counties surrounding downtown St. Louis came in and decided that he didn't like the plan anymore. And some of the deals that I had been trying to put together, as this dedicated planner and economic development person, that would have been the first new construction housing in St. Louis on the riverfront, next to the Arch. Everyone knows the Arch. The developer had a signed development agreement, and the mayor paid these guys $1 million to go away. And now there's a casino where this housing development was supposed to be. And then 9/11 happened. And I just sort of lost faith that politics and business and our government entities were really actually going to be able to change anything. And that was back in 2001. We know how the world has changed since then. It's not gotten better. But for me, I had a really amazing transformative moment happen. The day after Thanksgiving in 2001, I was having a musical party at my house, and there were a bunch of people, and they were playing music, and this guy came in, and he was playing his mandolin, and we stopped to have leftovers because it was the day after Thanksgiving. And he was telling this story, which was that he, as a mid-30s guy, had been a musician and an entertainer and an actor, and at 34, he'd suddenly had a grand mal seizure behind the wheel of the car. And he actually lived out in Denver, had been working professionally, but all of a sudden he had this life-transformative moment. Of course he had no health insurance. Of course the world became, really confusing, because what am I going to do? How do I drive to a gig when I'm suddenly not able to drive my car for 6 months? And what was this guy doing? He was playing music anyway, and he was playing it for people in retirement communities. And he was having this incredible impact on other people's lives. And I was so interested in this story that I went with him to watch one of these performances, and I was stunned to watch the incredible connection between him and the music that he was playing and the people who were there, who are in the last years of their lives and need to feel something, and the amazing connection. They would dance. They would know the words to songs, even if they didn't know their daughter and son's names. They could sing along in an amazing way. And I started to think, wow, this is where change happens. This is what makes people connect and heal and be different and throw down those barriers. And that's how you really change the world, is through creating art and amazing connections that can happen because we open up. We're so amazed by the connection that theater and words and the power of poetry and, of course, music can just bring us together. So for me, it made me go, oh my gosh, I think it's time to quit my job. And so I did. And not only that, sold the house and moved to Fort Collins to write a novel and married the man. And it's a beautiful, wonderful story, but it landed here, and it landed here with a new sense of understanding that our communities are so much stronger when art is a part of it, and that instead of running away from art, we need to retreat back into that incredible place of communication and creativity that cuts down all of the boundaries that keep us apart. I've been so amazed in designing and helping sort of foster this process to see how many people from completely different backgrounds are suddenly talking to each other. And they may just be having conversations about music or poetry or a painting or a piece of script on the wall behind us. But it's the beginning of a conversation that moves beyond that. And that's what I think has become so powerful and amazing about what we've designed and how this program is starting to unfold, is that we really have an opportunity to bring ourselves together, to follow our passions, and to find ways to engage in our communities and engage with neighbors and friends that we may only know over our fence, but we suddenly discover that we have a lot more in common than we really realized, because we're able to connect through art. And we're able to then have conversations that are deeper and more meaningful about our economy and our environment and healthcare and all of those really tough issues that maybe we're this close to finding the solution to. And the solution has got to be with us. So we're going to spend the rest of the weekend figuring all of this out together. And the good news is you're just about at a break. So you can stand up and stretch and think about a lot of information. This was sort of your one fire hose moment of the weekend, of a lot of different topics, a lot of different philosophical things to think about. But let's go do this stuff together.